We're doing it live.
We're live.
We're live. Welcome back, folks, to Amped Up with Cliff Schecter. I am that guy. I am Cliff Schecter. I'm here with David Shuster, who, of course, is the Emmy Award-winning.
Cliff, I am so fired up today. I'm so fired up about some horrible news because
but your Emmys,
all kinds of stuff. No. A report came out this morning. 108,000 jobs, 108,000 layoffs were announced in January. This is the worst start, the most number of job layoffs in the U.S. economy since 2009. Now, what was happening in 2009? Remind me.
I'm trying to remember.
The financial crisis, all those banks had failed. That's how bad it is. And the number was actually twice as bad as the December layoffs. And it was actually 3 times as bad as the January 2025 layoffs a year ago. Now,
you're using numbers. Those are hard for Trump and his people.
Yes. My economist friends point out that the labor market is usually the best predictor of the overall health of the economy. That if the labor market sucks, the economy is going to suck. The other, of course, being consumer confidence, which is also the worst it has ever been. So you combine all this, Cliff, and politically, the implications are huge, right? Because people keep saying the number one issue on the minds of voters is the economy. The job market is terrible. People are concerned, of course, about higher prices and affordability. Consumer confidence is way down. And that translates in part to why Democrats are looking at picking up perhaps 50 seats in the midterms, because Donald Trump's numbers on the economy are record lows. People see the economy rightfully as being in the toilet, and they're angry about it, which then takes us to, well, what could Donald Trump do to change it? He could fix the economy. He could eliminate the tariffs.
It's just a hoax. It's a hoax.
Or I suppose he could fix the elections, which is what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. I mean, the concern that we all have, of course, is watching them get just destroyed in elections in red districts. And we've been talking about this here since a while back because, and I'm glad many other people are talking about it now, because the truth of the matter is I've been worried since those elections in Iowa, and there was the Miami mayor's race. We hadn't won there in 30 years or so. We won that race, and so you saw a lot of Cubans who are key GOP constituency ditching them, and now we see this deep red Texas seat, a 32-point switch. So I mean, they know that they suck. They know that everybody knows they suck. I mean, if we're being honest, they know that people know that their economy's awful. People see people being rounded up in the streets and are scared of, their disapproval is at what, 64% on ICE. His little illegal bombing of Venezuela accomplished nothing for him. Even that was viewed negatively. And so all of these factors, Trump's obviously lying constantly. There's tariffs on, there's tariffs off. We're going to war with Greenland. I mean, it's exhausting for anybody. Republican,
yeah,
Democrat.
And I think I get the sense the American public, I mean, more and more people are sort of onto Trump, right? For example, Donald Trump keeps talking about, even the other night on NBC News, he says, well, I've been bringing in $18 trillion through investments and pledges. No, you haven't. And in fact, I mean, his own website suggests that maybe the number is half that, and then economists suggest maybe the number is only like 1/25 of that. But putting that aside, I mean, Donald Trump has insisted that, well, because of his efforts, U.S. manufacturing is going to have an incredible rebound, that manufacturing is going to be better than ever, that it already is. And in fact, the month-over-month manufacturing drops have also now continued for an entire year. There has been no increase in manufacturing jobs. We are steadily going down, down, and down. That hasn't changed since Donald Trump took office.
You wrote a piece about this, I feel like it was 3-4 months ago at this point, David. And yeah, that trend has just continued. But I mean, in all jokes aside, in serious, just for 1 second, I promise. But I mean, if you don't invest in the economy, if you deport a lot of your labor force, if you are so unstable in your decision making in day to day, what you're even up to, that people don't want to invest in your country, if you blow your debt up so much, you're getting downgraded. The dollar is. I mean, he's done basically everything you can do to take a healthy economy and sabotage it.
Yeah,
everything. Right. I mean, and so, of course, I mean, it's not like this stuff wasn't and isn't predictable. If you tell people you're going to raise tariffs up and down, you actually do it some of the time. if you get in a fight with all of your trading partners and threaten them, if you threaten World War III and by attacking Greenland, if you attack Venezuela and you're saying you're going to have the oil, but you had no plan on how to get this deep crude oil, heavy crude oil, and the oil companies are like, we're not doing that. Even just looking at that economically, that would be morally repugnant anyhow. You know, if you are so unstable that people have no faith in your country in general, and you deport a lot of your labor, and you fire so many government workers, many of whom shot, you know, oh my God, yeah, they're Trump voters too. Gee, I don't know what's going to happen if you do all of those things.
Yeah, and Cliff, I think you know this better than anybody that, I mean, obviously, most Americans are not up to date on the intricacies of economic theory and how it all sort of connects, but people can sense the instability. They can sense their own personal financial instability. They can sense their own economic problems
with their community,
within their community, within their neighborhood, whatever it is. And when they feel panic, that's when you start to see the overall approval numbers in the economy start to plummet, as they have been doing for Donald Trump. So the translation politically is, even if people, you know, can't sort of follow, and look, I'm not an economist and I don't understand some of this stuff, but I think most Americans know in their gut, something is wrong. Something is wrong with our economy. We're all having to pay more.
Now, mind you, not a gut filled with the kind of Donald Trump's gut is filled with.
Yeah, and that translates. That's a potent political force.
No, I mean, and again, I'm not saying, I don't think most people would look and say, oh, 108,000 jobs, you know, are paying that close attention to jobs in jobs lost, exactly what you just said. But they know if their farm shut down. They know if either their workforce has been deported or is no longer showing up because they're scared they're going to be deported. They know if they worked at a government agency, the Interior, or, you know, or IRS or whatever it might be, in places around the country, because, you know, some people made the mistake of thinking, oh, well, it's the government, it must just all be in Washington. I mean, we've got one of the bigger federal IRS buildings here in Cincinnati. There's federal infrastructure around the country where federal workers work, and they've been fired in these communities. And they do know if they don't have a job anymore and they can't spend anymore, and if suddenly everything is more expensive. So that's the thing, is people can actually feel it, as you're saying, because they either are feeling it personally, they're seeing it with their family members, they're seeing it with, you know, in their community. I mean, it's impossible not to see. I don't care what level of the economic ladder you're on. You're looking at things being more expensive. You're looking at and you're still seeing sort of, at some point, I do think it seeps through that, like, maybe this guy is not all there, even if they don't pay as much attention as we do. He may just be a little crazy. And maybe, you know, Miles Taylor, who worked with the man, may have something to offer on that. That might be the nicest way to bring him in. Is Trump crazy or not? So we won't do that. But let's bring in Miles.
Let's bring in Miles to assess the president's mental health with his his medical degree.
That's your expertise.
I got to set this up, because Miles, I mean, on top of being, he was the anonymous who talked to me, you know, wrote this big column about Donald Trump in his first term. He's a national security expert. He served in the Bush administration, the first Trump administration, wrote the anonymous column. What a lot of people don't know about Miles is he is a fellow Hoosier. He is perhaps the most famous person to come out of LaPorte, Indiana, since, I don't know, the Black Widow mass murderer in the early 1900s.
Oh my! Look, David,
that's how much I know about LaPorte, Indiana. Hey, Miles, welcome to the show.
Separately, David and I are going to have to have a conversation, because no one has adapted the most horrific mass murder story in U.S. history, one of them, Belle Guinness, into like a true feature film. I don't know why this hasn't happened. It's LaPorte's like real story is this mass murder, but that's for a separate pod, a separate time. But gents, I'm so thrilled to be with you today. Thanks for having me.
Well, David, I mean, we're going to give David credit here, because he went to Michigan, you know, University of Michigan, but he grew up in Bloomington. So he's, and mom's still there. So he's in Indiana. So if there's an Indiana or a Michigan connection, Shuster's going to find it. And he's going to, you know, and he likes to rub it in, because I'm sitting here in Cincinnati, and he can. It would probably be much worse if I were in Columbus, but
it's the best. I just have to say, we're already annoying the viewers, because Hoosiers do this, Midwesterners do this. It's like Hoosiers and, you know, maybe people from Michigan. You don't hear this like people from Boston. Oh my gosh, are you from Hingham? And they're hugging each other. It just doesn't happen.
The other day I drove my car over to you in Worcester, and you get that, right? Whereas here I'm like, Cincinnati, the Bengal. Oh, okay, the Reds are coming back, man.
Hey, man, you got Six Flags in Cincinnati. That's probably the best thing you got.
That's right. They did a Brady Bunch
That's what put it
episode.
on the map for us.
Right, the Brady Bunch. Like, they went to they came out here because our theme park is so good. But okay, we'll talk about politics, I guess,
Yes.
and elections, and whether we're going to actually have a real one, which is the thing. I'm really glad to have you on with your background. I mean, obviously, national security, cybersecurity around elections, personal fights with Donald Trump in some ways over that. Just the fact that you wanted to protect the vote, which is a terrible thing to do. But I mean, I've been thinking this for a while because as I watched these elections, long before we got to this Texas one, where we just, I mean, if I'm going to be honest, kicked their asses. It was a 32-point switch, I believe, in the vote in a deep red district. But Miami winning, I was talking about before, winning that race, with Cuban Americans leaving the Republican Party to vote for Democrats. And there were a number of others, and I can't remember exactly. There's a Pennsylvania race and Iowa race where we just were blowing it out, and that Tennessee special we almost won. So I'm sitting here thinking the guy did January 6th, as Jack Smith has again told us recently. Pam Bondi is trying to extort Minneapolis, like, nice city you got there. We'll keep destroying it and killing people if you don't give us the voter rolls. If we're going to just be honest about what she was saying. And then Fulton County, Georgia. I mean, what is to stop him? How can we stop him if he's determined that, I mean, Steve Bannon just said, let's have ICE surround all the polling places, which is something I brought up 2 weeks ago. What if they have ICE go to the polling places? Apparently, yeah, they're thinking about that.
Look, I don't want to sugarcoat it. I mean, I think this is the gravest threat our elections have ever faced, ever in American history. And it was my job to do election security at DHS. We stood up the infrastructure to prevent another meddling controversy like we saw with the Russians. I mean, that's the irony that people don't realize is after Donald Trump came in, it was his own team that built the interagency architecture that the Biden team kept in place to keep bad guys from meddling in our elections because we knew it had to be done. But it was only done with Donald Trump kicking and screaming. I mean, at every turn, it didn't make sense to us at the time. He didn't want us putting in place these structures to prevent foreign interference. Even the executive order that he signed in 2018 that his team has been citing lately, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. Tulsi Gabbard's been citing this executive order that was signed in 2018 to allow the president to better protect elections against foreign interference. Donald Trump didn't want to sign that document. And, maybe it was naivete at the time, but folks like me were like, what the heck is the president doing? And it made everyone more and more suspicious about his potential links to Russia. But I think the simplest explanation is that he realized that the bad guys were interfering in the election to help him, that they wanted him to win, and he didn't want his own team stopping that from happening. But, Donald Trump was also under investigation by Robert Mueller at the time. And I think he also didn't want to say no to and kill programs and things that would make him look even more guilty. So some of these efforts went into place. They've been systematically dismantled now that Trump is back in office. And for a lot of reasons, internally and externally, it's put greater threat on our elections. But let's not, dodge the main issue here. The president of the United States thinks he can seize ballots. He has now gone and sent his agents to seize ballots. What we are seeing right now in Fulton County is, in my estimation, an unlawful, federalized recount, unconstitutional, of the 2020 vote. Donald Trump just said yesterday in his conversation
just can't
with
get
NBC,
over
the
that,
Oval Office.
Kenny.
He just said that the FBI agents are going to find out who really won in 2020. He said that 2 days after his head of national intelligence wrote a letter to Congress and said, I went to this raid at the order of the president, she said, even though Donald Trump says he doesn't know why Tulsi Gabbard was down there. She said, I went down there at the order of the president, and I did it to look into potential foreign interference in our democracy. And then Donald Trump, as always, cuts her legs out from underneath her and says, I think those agents are going to see who won in 2020. He's implying that the agents are there to count the ballots, to relitigate that. If that's Donald Trump's motivation, listen up, everyone, that is illegal. Donald Trump perhaps just confessed or gave us the best piece of evidence that he broke the law, and not the type of law he can pardon people for, state law, because the elections are administered by the states. This might be one of the most obviously impeachable things he's done since he's become president. And because he can't control what he says, he's just blurted the evidence out in the past 24 hours.
And the evidence out of Georgia's, I mean, there were 3 recounts, right? There was the election, there were 2 other recounts, and Donald Trump, even though he asked the Republican Secretary of State for 11,000 votes, he never found them. And I'm not sure how he necessarily finds 11,000 votes now this time when he couldn't find them, 6 years ago, whatever it was. But the other issue, I mean, which is so mind-boggling, is that let's just give Donald Trump Georgia. He still would have lost the 2020 election.
Right. When he head to Wisconsin next to bust in Wisconsin, that's the thing. I mean, we just can't have somebody, I don't even know how else to put it, this emotionally damaged. We can't have these emotional men running our country is what
right. So here's my question to you, Miles, and that is, you mentioned the infrastructure that was scaled up to try to block, foreign interference.
Yeah.
And you also talked about how some of that has been dismantled. What is your greatest concern, both in terms of foreign meddling and also is there an opportunity, given your understanding of the system, for domestic interference?
Yeah. I mean, look, that's the thing that we failed at catastrophically in trying to secure our elections is we never imagined that the biggest threat after 2016 would come from within the House and not outside of it. And the infrastructure that was built to protect our elections was not prepared for the possibility that it might be the president himself that's the one that's trying to prevent the peaceful transfer of power. And so you saw there was almost nothing that these agencies could do in 2020 when this happened. And the one thing they could do is say, we assess that the election was secure and it was free and fair. And when my former colleague, Chris Krebs, did that, who Trump appointed to that job, Donald Trump fired him by tweet and said, nope, that's a lie. It wasn't free and fair. That was the only thing they could do is say, no, it's been our job to work with states and locals to secure the election. We've seen no evidence of fraud, no evidence of tampering. And for that, he fired Chris Krebs, which is, I think, very obvious and very damning what the president's motivations were doing that. And he's still trying to relitigate the 2020 election. But David, to your question, the thing that concerns me the most out of all of this isn't Donald Trump and his team stuffing ballot boxes in the midterms. It isn't somehow someone's going to hack into the voting machines. I'll tell you, the Russians spent an unbelievable amount of money to try to do this in 2016. You know what they found? It's really, really freaking hard to manipulate American elections because they're so decentralized, really hard, and even harder to keep a conspiracy to do that covered up. What worries me the most are the things Donald Trump can and will do in the open. Just saying and having all the mouthpieces of the federal government saying mail-in voting is not safe. That is enough to take populations, people over the age of 65 in key swing districts and scare them. Well, the president's saying my vote won't be counted if I do it by mail. Well, he's wrong because it will be counted and it's not his job, it's the state's job. But that type of misinformation could create mass voter suppression. But again, they don't have to do that across the whole country. Donald Trump needs to pick 3 or 4 states and 5 or 6 districts in those states to heavily focus the lies about mail-in ballots and to potentially deploy, as you guys noted at the intro, armed forces around polling places to create a very powerful,
especially in African-American neighborhoods, the threats of, they do the equivalent of a poll tax, right? Like, which is, if you haven't paid this bill or you haven't done whatever, and having these ICE guys standing there or whoever, that's what I worry about too.
And that's what they can do. And if they apply consistently those tactics in key swing areas, all they need to do is get a couple thousand people in each area to just not show up at the polls, and they increase their odds of it going for Republican candidates and can change the balance of power or maintain the balance of power in Washington. That's really worrisome. And that's why it's led me the past couple of weeks to say to folks, this is going to be the first election anyone's ever voted in modern American history where your responsibility is more than just going and casting a ballot. Your responsibility is your friends, your family, and community, and making sure they know the truth and that they're not scared to go vote. You've never had that obligation. People have told you to help get out the vote, but they've never told you, if you want the election to be free and fair, it's on you, because the federal government's not going to protect us from this. State and locals are going to try their damnedest, but they're not going to be able to compete with Donald Trump sowing misinformation around the country, and they'll have a whole political party doing it. So it's literally on every one of us to make sure we're not only going out and voting, but that we're telling mom and dad and grandma and grandpa and everyone where they can vote, how they can vote, and helping them and making sure that they go do that. And the phrase that I've been using is too big to rig. We have to make the election too big to rig so that when Donald Trump tries to say it's 1,000 votes here or there that were stolen from me, it doesn't matter, Donald Trump.
Right.
Your guys lost handily in this election. That's what needs to be done.
And that, I mean, honestly, that is why I wanted to have you on here, Miles, to talk about this, because and I felt like since I came up, since that happened, even like 5 days ago, whenever it was, where I was like, we had to have you on. It was, I just saw Heather Cox Richardson wrote something about this, and some other folks are, and that makes me happy, because it feels like part of it is we have to in a way that Democrats and are just terrible at, and I don't understand why we can never coordinate messaging, but have to get this out there that this is, that what just happened in Minnesota, connect that to Fulton County, connect that to to what Steve Bannon said, and to say to people exactly what you just said. Are there other, so that makes me start thinking about, like, should we have certain national security voices out there? Should we have, certain parts of the legal establishment? Former conservative judges, Judge Ludig. I don't know. I literally am just trying to think of anybody. Hell, I've even floated the idea of, and I don't generally like military anywhere around elections, but certain retired generals. If this is a break glass in case of emergency moment, then maybe we need everybody who cares about our democracy speaking out about this.
It is, Cliff, and we'd be complete and utter fools not to think that Donald Trump will do again what he tried to do in 2020. What the man is not reformed. Nothing has changed. The only thing that has changed is in the negative, as in Donald Trump has done riskier things legally and financially and in foreign policy that he feels like his whole existence and legacy is on the line if power changes hands. He worries about going to prison. He should worry about going to prison. He worries about having his business deals investigated. He should worry about having those investigated. He worries about having his engagement with nefarious individuals highlighted even further if the Democrats retake one or both houses. So many other things. He sees his whole future, whatever's left of it, tied up in which party holds power in Washington, D.C. A man like that backed into a corner isn't going to say, well, I can't go seize those ballots because that's illegal. He's going to do anything and everything, and it could get as scary as anyone could imagine. And here's one of the things that I wrote about a few years ago that worried me, is there is something that is colloquially called in the national security community the Doomsday Book. And this is basically the binder of break glass in case of emergency powers a president of the United States has if the United States is invaded, if there's a nuclear war. I bring this up because I asked the Department of Homeland Security a few years ago if they would give me permission to go talk about this simple fact, which is this. Just before the 2020 election, there is one person whose job it is on the National Security Council to protect the Doomsday Book. Well, just before the 2020 election, Donald Trump almost appointed a super mega MAGA flunky into that job. He didn't know that job was the person who protected the Doomsday Book. And the people in the National Security Council freaked out, and they worked very hard to keep this inexperienced person from taking that job.
Well, we saw him put people at the Pentagon, just to give that like some just to the context of that. He was appointing people, and this would have been even worse, obviously.
Yes, because what Donald Trump didn't realize, because I don't believe he's ever held his hands on that book, is some of the extraordinary authorities he potentially could have used to interfere in the 2020 election. And there was a group of folks a couple years ago that came out and said, we cannot let him get reelected. Among many, many reasons is because he will go after the Doomsday Book now that he knows it exists. He will try to use these extraordinary presidential powers that people don't know about in elections. And you can go read about these things. It's notionally the continuity of government plans, and there's some things out there about the Doomsday Book that are declassified from the Bush years that people can draw their own conclusions about what the president might be able to do. But now he's back in power. And there's no limit in my mind to what he might try to do if he thinks his whole future and his livelihood and his life and his legacy is on the line. And so that's why it has to be a mass outpouring. But there is one other angle here, Cliff and David, which is state and locals are starting to step up. I mean, we launched something this past week called the Fight Against Federal Overreach. And if folks want to read about it, they can go over to defiance.org. But in the wake of what happened in Minnesota,
And can you also, as you do this, tell us that and then tell us a little bit about Defiance?
So we were hearing from a lot of people after what happened with Renee Good and Alex Preddy that folks were sick of it. Why wasn't the FBI arresting these DHS agents that were clearly committing crimes? And I think the answer to that's probably obvious to folks. And this administration is not policing itself, as you would expect the federal government to do when federal agents commit crimes. And so a conversation started to bubble up among local prosecutors around this country saying, we might have to, for the first time in modern history, start prosecuting federal agents because the government won't police its own people. We took that conversation a couple steps further, and we got some of the biggest prosecutors in the country to come together. Minneapolis, Philly, Austin, Dallas. They're meeting tomorrow in Washington, D.C., their first emergency meeting to talk about what should we start doing to hold these law-breaking federal agents accountable, and how do we expand our ranks to every DA in the country that's willing to do that. That's an important thing to do. We have also started, in the wake of what we saw this week about elections, having conversations about whether that group needs to go beyond just holding accountable DHS agents who use excessive force and look at other things, like making sure we're holding the federal government accountable if it's trying to meddle in state elections. So there's a conversation
can I just say
here.
quickly, because we've talked about this here too, DAs is one of the things that was just driving me nuts that they weren't, because they have local authority. Have you thought about attorneys general too? Because I thought to myself, they also should have some authority here potentially to arrest these guys, right?
Yeah. The good news with the AGs is, look, the AGs have more communications channels, and they're in contact and coordinating on ways to, sue the federal government, these different pieces. The gap that we saw is local DAs they didn't have the same thing. And Larry Krasner from Philadelphia was the one that told us that. And so we said, hey, Larry, can we help you stand up, a nonprofit group to pull the DAs together and to do all the heavy lifting to make sure that happens? And so that's what we help them do. And to your other question,
thank you. That's awesome.
That's why we launched this thing. I mean, we're a nonprofit civic club called defiance.org. That's just member run. We've got 100,000 supporters around the country and 10,000 paid members. We pool our funds every week, and we support missions to counter Trump's abuses of power. Not things we don't like about Donald Trump, not policy issues we disagree with, observable abuses of power and constitutional violations. Every single week, we launch a new mission to do something to counter them and put real money towards it and real effort and real people. And so last week's mission was launching what's called Fight Against Federal Overreach, which I think is a great acronym Larry Krasner came up with, FAFO. And, next week, we're going to be announcing some big things on election security that we're doing, existing groups out there that we're going to go fund to ramp up their efforts to protect our elections. And that's probably going to be our biggest focus of the year. As Defiance.org members told us last night at our member meeting, we really want to push firepower towards securing our elections and fighting back against the misinformation, but also doing the things like we're doing to local prosecutors, is making sure the states that are most likely to be targeted are ready to sue this administration, even if they have to sue it preemptively. And I think that there's a case to be made that, given what Donald Trump is doing, some of these states are going to be in a position to have those lawsuits literally just ready to sign from the AG and to slap them into the hopper so that there can be a stay on some of the actions undertaken by the administration.
And there are overt actions. There are overt actions that we need to defend against. But I feel like there's also some policy stuff as well. And I want to take this opportunity to give a big shout out to our own Substack colleagues, Melissa Corrigan and
Dana Dubois.
Sorry, I'm spacing out. They wrote a remarkable Substack on the SAVE Act and talking about how that suppresses votes by making it so much more difficult for even them, military veterans, divorced women who changed their name, to try to figure out how to be able to register for vote. The hurdles that the SAVE Act would put in front of people is remarkable. So I encourage everybody to sort of look at that. And Miles, to the point in terms of policy, is that the way that you see Republican sycophants in Congress? Essentially, okay, they're not going to go along with the overt efforts that Donald Trump may have to try to sabotage the elections, but they're fine to go on with policy that makes it a lot more difficult for people.
Well, David, I wouldn't think I would normally disagree with you on that point, but I'm going to disagree with you because I actually think they are willing to go along with some of the crazier stuff. They're not right now. Well, they're not forced to. You saw John Thune and and Speaker Johnson say the other day, well, Donald Trump doesn't mean he wants to nationalize elections. What he means is blah, 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 blah. These policy provisions of the SAVE Act, give me a fucking break. I worked for the guy. He doesn't know a thing about any of the policy provisions in the SAVE Act. When he said what he said, he meant what he said. He would like to nationalize elections. He would like federal control. As recently as last night, he repeated the line that states are just an agent of the federal government. I'm sorry, the man knows nothing about U.S. history. The states are not agents of the federal government. If anything, the federal government should be subordinate to the states. But conversation for a separate time. Donald Trump does understand one thing. He understands a badge and a gun gives him power. And he has said in 2020, he wishes he had sent out the National Guard to go seize ballots and take over elections. He is willing to do something like that in 2026 and certainly in 2028. My worry is that, just like on January 6th, Republicans will be aghast and opposed. And within 24 hours, they will realize their political futures depend on this man, and they will fall right back into line behind him. Very scary things can happen, and they'll go along with it. But this is the predicate Donald Trump and his team and Tulsi Gabbard are trying to lay. They're trying to spin just enough of a conspiracy theory that there's secretiveness and that there's fraud, so that if the FBI goes and does what they just did in Fulton County in 10 more places in 2026, goes and literally seizes the ballots,
Right.
that Republicans will say, well, there's precedent for that because they did it in Fulton County and things are bad. Well, but wait, isn't that unconstitutional? Don't states maintain elections? Well, I don't know. If a crime was committed, the president's on solid ground. He's giving them things to defend that action. And I think we're not even talking about that enough. The president just went and seized ballots from an election. He did it with the FBI. People are not lighting their hair on fire in the streets over this thing. He can go send the FBI to do that in 20 more places in the midterm elections if he alleges fraud, because here's all he has to do. All he has to do, as David knows, is get someone who's a federal officer, an intelligence community member, someone at the FBI, to file an affidavit with a magistrate judge to say, I think a crime was committed, for that judge to say there's probable cause. They just have to find a friendly magistrate judge that's willing to do that. And what they wrote on the piece of paper can be bullshit because they know that the accountability is not going to come until later. Some of them might even be promised pardons for that. I was promised pardons by the president from his own mouth if I broke the law on his behalf, right? I can't imagine I'm the only one that he ever did that to.
We heard that. I mean, that came out with a bunch of other people saying the same thing, but that's incredible. But I mean,
well, so look, that's what I worry about is that Republicans will go along with this if he has said, look, it's a totally legitimate thing, and so that puts all the more pressure on all of us now to get out there and force to protect these elections, to make sure they're free and fair, and to make sure that the states are ready to fight for state rights.
Is there an opportunity because of how much Donald Trump has declined since he gave that promise to you? I mean, a lot of people would say one of the saving grace, and we've had guests on who say because of Donald Trump's own sort of dementia or the way his brain is rotting, that actually helps all of us, because if he was perhaps just as with it as he was, say, 10 years ago and had this sort of evil intent, that would
I'm not
be
sure
a
I'd say
really
with
horrible
it, David,
combination.
but I'd say at least a little closer to it, maybe. With it, okay, go ahead. I didn't mean to.
I think he's so much more capable of carrying this type of thing out this time because that, the word guardrails has become almost noxious to hear, but that last guardrail of people with a small flickering semblance of a conscience around him is gone. I think a lot of Democrats didn't expect Bill Barr to be their savior in 2020, but Bill Barr was one of the reasons this coup plot inside the government got slowed down, is because he and his team said, no, you can't do these things. And I'm not trying to puff people like me up who were in the administration in the first term. That thesis, the Axis of Adults thesis that folks like me helped propagate, love it or hate it, kept us from the Donald Trump we are seeing today. But I always say there were no heroes
Even about
in the
someone
first
like
Trump
Mike Pence,
administration.
right? Who I disagree with on everything politically. JD Vance versus Mike Pence. I mean, we know what Vance would do, which is he's done it already. He's like, he's Hitler, but hey, I'm his VP now, so he's not so Hitler.
I could not agree with you more, Cliff. I mean, even Pence, I was so frustrated with Pence in the first administration because he would stand in these meetings where Trump wanted to do things that were obviously illegal, obviously unconstitutional. He would say nothing. He would never push back. He would leave little guy no names like me to sit there and fight with the president, or even his son-in-law. Jared fought with the president more than the vice president fought with the president. And so, before Pence made his decision, I was out there critical of him. I said the guy had an erect posture and a flaccid conscience. And why wouldn't Mike Pence stand up to Donald Trump? But you know what? He did stand up to him in a moment that really mattered. Yeah. Those people are not there anymore. And so Donald Trump, if he wants to move forward with one of these plots, he's got the yes men to do it. And, that's what worries me. Here's what I will say, though, on an optimistic note, though, is the resistance, the defiance, whatever you want to call it, right now in this country is growing. I mean, it is overflowing at the seams. And I would not have said this a year ago. A year ago, we all remember people that we know, people we used to work with, who we normally would expect to be out there and be vocal. They shut themselves up. They self-censored. They were terrified. As he was going after universities and law firms, they said, I don't want to be the next one. I'm just going to bury my head in the sand. That has all changed. We are going into 2026 with a country that is furious, that is motivated, and as you noted, Cliff, that is electing Democrats in deep red Republican districts. By the way, I'm not a Democrat. I'm still a conservative. I'm not a registered Republican anymore. I'm a lifelong conservative. And I will tell you, I think the right is going to get creamed in these elections, is absolutely going to get stomped all over because that defiance in this country is growing so fast.
Well, that's important. And again, tonight I'm going to be doing a show with Joe Walsh, and same deal, right? He's conservative, but conservative liberal. If you're fighting for democracy, I would argue that is what's most important, right? We need people to win who will respect our democracy and care about our republic. So obviously what Defiance is doing, I'm so glad to hear, like, that made me feel a lot better. The DAs and some of these folks are who you guys are organizing, getting more involved. Regular people coming out. Are there sort of any other pressure points you can think of? Any other things? I feel like we have to make a big, as you said, they're going to try to spin their narrative, so we had better be answering it constantly, so they can't set it up so that, see, we told you there's fraud. But
one thing that I've suggested to members of Congress as recently as this morning too was talking to a couple of members of Congress on the relevant oversight committees. They need to start more loudly signaling that they're going to be investigating these crimes. Power will flip hands, and Donald Trump's subordinates, who won't be able to be pardoned for state crimes, need to be worried that they are taking on very significant legal liability for this man that could ruin their lives and careers and take away their freedom if they carry this forward. I think there needs to be a shot across the bow to some of these folks. I even thought about this the other day. I was literally laying in bed, and just before my wife and I fell asleep, I said, honey, I think we should spin up something called the On Notice Project, where we go pay a couple of different law firms to write legal opinions about things the president's doing. And then we just make sure they land in the inboxes of all of his subordinates that are in charge of carrying out those things, and just saying, hey, look, guys, some independent lawyers came to the conclusion that if you're going to go seize ballots in Georgia, and if you have any tie to the decision to go do that, you're potentially personally liable because this is not consistent with your duties, the Constitution, the law, et cetera. There are so many things Trump is doing that I think we need to send a signal to the people on his team to not carry out manifestly illegal orders. And Congress is best positioned to do that, the political opposition in Congress. And some members have been really good about that. And I think they need to be even louder as to say, hey, listen, folks, we are not going to forget. And the president cannot save you. He's not going to be able to pardon you for everything. And by the way, like a mob boss, he's promising all of them he'll protect them. But in the end, he won't.
Right.
Well, I know, Miles, that you got to go in a couple of minutes, but I got to ask you, you spent a lot of time literally in the room with Donald Trump in the first term. What's one of the things that you picked up about Donald Trump that perhaps a lot of the public doesn't realize, both positive and negative?
And you don't have to tell us about the smell. We've heard about that.
I can still smell it. I would say more than anything, and some folks might have heard me say this before, but the most instructive thing that I ever heard come out of his mouth, and it's not like I was socially close with the man, but he spent more time with our department than any other department because he was obsessed with badges and guns, like I mentioned. And DHS has more of them than any other domestic agency. And he talked about the word leverage in a way that made me fully understand, I think, what needs to be understood about his psychology. And this is the comment that he made 2 times in my presence that I always go back to, is he said he learned one thing in business that was so important, which is that you don't threaten to sue people to get what you want. Because if you threaten to sue someone, they wave their hand, and he said, they go, psh, and they ignore it and they do what they want. Whether you have a case or not, you just sue them and then they settle. And that's abhorrent for all the obvious reasons. Donald Trump was making the case for, putting frivolous lawsuits out into the world to get what you wanted. That's not legal to do. But if you think about what he's done with Greenland, what he's done with Minnesota, you pick the policy issue. This is how Donald Trump tries to get leverage. He goes hard into the paint, does something wrong and reprehensible and shocking to the other side, just as a way to get them to preemptively capitulate rather than doing a fair negotiation. This is his art of the deal, but there's another word for that. It's just called coercion. That's
Right.
what coercion is.
Well,
And
it seems he does that
calls
to
it
his own
leverage.
folks too, right? I mean, that's how he keeps them in line, because they're legitimately scared of what he might do, because he does go after them. And, I mean, it could be someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene that kissed his ass forever, and he's got people threatening her life. So clearly there's no place he'll stop.
Well, he's a sociopath. And, people in the White House, when I was in the first administration, would call and give me a heads up that the president or his team had leaked to the media that he was going to fire this cabinet secretary or that cabinet secretary. So we basically could let them know, hey, Donald Trump's planting a story to make you scared that he's going to fire you, because he wanted to send a message to make them more loyal. You just saw this happen. Now, I can't say for sure that Donald Trump was the one that planted the stories about the potential firing of Kristi Noem, but you look at the sourcing of those stories, it's like, this is pretty close to the president. He puts those things out there privately to scare those cabinet members. Then publicly he says, no. So he can create the carrot and stick so he can keep them in line. And here's why, because he learned from those of us in the first term. That's right. He learned in the first term. We said no to him too much, because I'll be honest, guys, I didn't want to go to prison for this man. And he constantly was proposing illegal things to us. No, Mr. President, we can't do that. No, Mr. President, we can't do that. Well, his one way of threatening this current team of obsequious pleasers is to say, if you ever develop the semblance of a conscience, just know I'm going to ruin you, fire you, destroy your life forever. And he likes to make sure that they have those reminders on an intermittent basis.
He's a really nice guy, isn't he?
You guys should have him.
I think we saw this in the
program.
Epstein files. We've seen the same behavior. I mean, it's like every aspect of his life, whether it's business negotiations, whether it's interpersonal relationships, whether it's women that he met, this is how he operates.
Yeah.
It's all about leverage, but really the word we should use is coercion. It's all about coercion, and that's his whole strategy. And when you're dealing with someone like that, to tie the loop back together, when it comes to an election, we need to recognize that's how Donald Trump will view it. If he goes and seizes ballots in 20 places to create a controversy, he knows that he's got leverage, because he can say, okay, I'll return them if you run a recount. I'll return them if, and he'll get something he never would have otherwise have gotten. We need to prepare for it to get that extreme. And like I said, the lawsuits need to be drafted in advance.
Miles, so great having you on Blue Amp Media.
Oh, go ahead.
I say, Miles, I know you got to go. So great having you on Blue Amp Media. Good luck with Defiance. How can people support it? How can people find it?
Yeah, if folks just go to defiance.org, look, you can sign up for free to see what we're doing every week and the actions that we're taking. If you want to come be a part of the club, you can be a part of the club. And we've made it so that a member fee is whatever someone wants. If you want to give $1 a month to be in the club, if you want to give $1,000 a month, we pool our funds, we go give it to great causes, and our members at our monthly member meetings decide, here's what we're going to focus on next, here's what we should go do. So I'm in this. This is not what I wanted to be doing. I was out of public life and running a profitable business and enjoying building a family. But after this guy came after me last year again, I thought, you know what? Forget that. I'm in this until the very end. So I'm going to be fighting this guy till the very end. I cannot thank you two enough, because you have been very courageous and standing up and showing people not to be afraid to speak the truth. So I'll be in this with you until the very end, gents, and very grateful. So folks can just check out defiance.org if they want to come join us.
Miles
so
Taylor,
much,
the
Miles.
pride of LaPorte, Indiana. Miles is to political resistance, to Trump resistance, what the Black Widow was to serial killers.
He's just not going to get over that, is he?
We'll be back in a few weeks to talk a whole episode on Bell Gunnis and
Right.
and that murder mystery. So thank
We're
you,
gonna
gents.
have you
That's
back.
good.
And we're
Thanks,
gonna
Miles.
discuss
Appreciate
that,
it.
Miles. Absolutely.
Take care.
Seriously, thank you for coming on. We really appreciate it.
We appreciate it.
Chat soon.
Take
See ya.
care. And look, I see somebody else in our green room, because our green room just sort of pops up with really important former Republicans.
Hey,
Today
it's
is-
Reed Galen.
Hi, Reed. How are you?
I'm well. I'm currently in a hotel in a secret, undisclosed location, so don't talk about where I am.
You're not in a
Alone.
Dick Cheney man-sized safe, are you?
No, but I do have one of those at home.
Okay. I remember reading about that back then. And I thought that was pretty cool. I was making a joke earlier, and then we'll get to this. Do you realize I didn't think about it? I'm like, wait, I'm talking to Miles Taylor, Reed Galen, and kicking off a show tonight, Tequila Talk, everybody, where Joe Walsh and I are going to sip tequila and talk politics. It could get interesting. It could get crazy.
What could possibly go wrong?
So it's like 3 ex-Republicans who all now rip Trump and the Republican Party, and that wasn't even done on purpose. But
It's like that old Sesame Street game. Which one of these is not like the other? Hey, Schuster's not like these 3.
right, but of course, you know, you're a good Hoosier, like our friend from before. So tell us what's going on with you, Reed, and how are we going to stop Donald Trump from stealing the next election?
Well, first and foremost, guys, thanks for having me. Look, I think that we need to be vigilant. I think that the sense I get is, first, let me back up. I think I was just reading a write-up of Trump's NBC interview, and I just have to impress upon people that Trump always chickens out, is not a thing. I know it makes people feel better. I know it makes people laugh, but let's be clear, like taco are tactical retreats. They are things that he says, as he always has throughout his life, things that he says and does in the moment to get out of an uncomfortable position he doesn't want to be in. They are not changes in policy. If Tom Cuddy Sark Homan says, you know, I'm going to pull 700 people out of Minneapolis, that doesn't mean he's getting rid of those 700 people. It means that they're probably going to be sent to Philadelphia or Atlanta or someplace else. And so I think it's really important that first we understand that for these guys, their mission and their path have not changed. Oh, Kristi Noem's on her way out. No, she's not. Right. They sent the bullet head with the weird haircut. They sent him away. I'd guess, guys, that it was, to me, you know, the reason why they got rid of him probably is because Trump saw a picture of him and thought that guy's really freaking weird. I don't want that guy around.
The bullet.
Like,
Are you,
And he is really short,
Pavino.
right?
Are you talking
Pavino's
about
only
shorter
He's
Hitler?
only like 4'2". He's like a little
right.
musket.
So Trump doesn't like little people. He doesn't like weird uniforms. And I promise you, he doesn't like that weird haircut. So like, there's a reason. The reason why Bovino got
haircut
thrown
he's
out
right
of
about,
Minneapolis, right, is not necessarily because he was doing a bad job, although he was. So let's talk about, Cliff, what you're talking about. I think that what we saw in Atlanta, or excuse me, in Fulton County, I think is important. And I think the one thing that we need to broaden in just what Miles was saying a little bit before he jumped off is, like, the security services are at work. They're hard at work. They're overtly at work in places like Minneapolis, where I think they probably really hoped, guys, that they were going to get a George Floyd style riot in response. Instead, they got 2 dead American citizens and a united peaceful protest movement, and that didn't give them what they wanted. Right. So that didn't work.
They went ahead and accidentally killed white Americans who looked like they could live in the suburbs. And of course, for their purposes, they would have much rather it be people that look differently than that, because that's how they think.
Or look, like we saw a few years ago, they wanted burning police departments, right? Like they wanted those images. They couldn't. They killed 2 citizens in the process, but they didn't get what they wanted. Now, Fulton County, we've got Tulsi Gabbard lurking about, right? Like, these are all means to an end. Like Trump, we have to remind ourselves too, like, Trump knew he lost the 2020 election, but he couldn't just get over it, right? It's not intellectually he doesn't know it, it's emotionally.
Yep.
that he couldn't get over. I mean, remember, the guy's a lizard brain, right? He doesn't have a cerebral cortex or a frontal lobe the way we think about it. He is all emotion and instinct all the time.
It's all amygdala. The rest of it's kind of dripped out, I think, already.
Right, exactly. Yes, it's and so I think that we do have to do this, and I think that we have to rely and we have to impress upon our folks in places like Pennsylvania, Georgia, where all these important elections are going to happen, that also in some places either happen to be run by Democratic governors, Democratic attorneys general, very outspoken DAs like in Philadelphia, or people who have stood up to Trump like Brad Raffensperger in Georgia. And we have to say, guys, like, you must not back down now. Like, I know that you're probably under incredible pressure, but now is the time that you actually have to step up further, and you have to ensure that every place that someone might vote in a primary or a general election, right, is safe and secure by local and state authorities, right? I mean, I remember going back, guys, to the summer of 2020 when we were game planning out what might happen if Trump tried to do something like this on election day, his second election day. And we're like, they could ship ICE agents to polling places like we think they might do. You could have friendly constitutional sheriffs just deploy deputies.
Well,
and
we know that's how
Smoky
you do it, right? Like Bannon
Right.
floats it, and then pick a half dozen right-wing radio shows and a couple crappy, publications with Daily in it, because those are all right-wing. It's like Daily Wire, Daily Idiot, Daily. I am there? Am I wrong about that? Like
there is Daily Coast,
Caller,
which is on the other side, but there's an exception.
What'd you say?
I would say there's an exception with Daily Coast on the other side, but no,
That's true.
I mean,
That's fair. There's just a
to
lot
your
of
point, there's sort of a couple different ways that they could do this, right? They could intimidate people on the front end by sending law enforcement, police to try to keep people literally away from polling places, because people are terrified of, oh my God, because I once had a traffic ticket, they're going to send me to jail if I vote. There's that kind of intimidation, and then there's what happens after the votes are cast, in which they seize ballots, demand recounts, fiddle with the recounts. Do you have a concern in terms of which one is a greater concern, Reed, or are they both equal? I mean, what can we do about both?
Others that we haven't thought of,
I mean, I would say this, I think they're all concerns. So let's play out a really ugly scenario here. So let's say that in a key county or a key congressional district, it happens to be represented in part by a sheriff who has no scruples. And remember that sheriffs, they're elected. They answer to only two people, God and the voters, right? So like, they're not worried about like the governor coming after them or something like that. It's a very unique position in America. But let's just say that they deploy these guys and they scare enough voters off. Okay. Or they tie up everything. And so the polling place is disturbed, is distracted. Let's say the polls are supposed to close at 7, 8, whatever it is. People have not had the opportunity to vote. Now you're running to a judge asking them to, keep the polling place open. But the polling place,
and remember that too.
Open,
you know what? I don't mean to cut you off, but guess what? We're also unique among democracies that we elect a bunch of our judges. So imagine that in some of these places there could be a judge who's elected who doesn't give a damn either about what any governor has to say.
Right. And so why I bring all these things up, guys, is because if you screw enough things up on election day, we don't have a do-over rule, right? For the most part, like we don't have that where it's like, well, this is screwed up. I'm sure they could come up with something, a judge, if I guess, and again, you'd have to get an election lawyer on board to figure this out, is like, I guess they could have a redo on the election. But I think that you think about like how many people get in trouble for campaign finance violations, right? Where they clearly used money, but it doesn't invalidate the election. Right. They still won, and there's nothing to undo that. And so that to me is the biggest concern, is getting people who might otherwise turn out to not turn out, or going out of their way to depress the vote in other ways, which remember that since 2002, only one time has turnout nationally been over 50% in a midterm. Right. And that was 50.3% in 2018. Right. So we already have a massive number. Half the available votes are going to stay home. So I think what we have to do on the front end is be very clear about, first of all, like, let me back up even further. Like, Democrats need to say what they're for, because if they don't say what they're for and they don't demonstrate what the program is, Donald Trump is a piece of it. Don't get me wrong. And he might be the biggest piece of it. But the other parts, The first biggest issue is whether or not your people are even going to come out, right? If you can't convince them to show up in the first place, like whether or not somebody screws with the election might not matter.
Well, of course, right.
Now, if Hakeem Jeffries is listening to me, I just shut the DCCC down right now. Like, you probably take the House all by itself. You'd probably be in a lot better place. But
and the messaging would be better coming from virtually anybody else.
Virtually anybody else. But so, I think that they have to decide what it is they want to be for. So far, they have not done that. And let's be candid, I don't think they're going to, because they're in the like first do no harm thing. I think that organizations like the one I'm president of, the union, and others who are
good. I was going
dedicated
to ask you to talk more about yours.
Yeah. Like, we need to be out there recruiting poll watchers and poll workers, right? So that we know that we have our own army. Remember, Bannon talked about, we're going to go out and recruit people for all, like, we need to be doing that same thing as a matter of course, and we need to do it now. The other part too, guys, is and I say this, talking almost exclusively about Democratic candidates, but let's call it the pro-democracy side, have been way too willing to wait until October to really start deploying campaign resources. Look, I like you guys, I have probably bought more television time than I can forget about, right? And written more ads and all that. We all have, right? But for me, like, we need to pull that voter contact ahead by about 7 months to right now in every possible district we can, because this has to be so big they can't steal it. It has to be such a wave election that it's not just the nature of how badly Republicans do when Donald Trump is in office but not on the ballot, but also that it's a repudiation of everything he's said and done.
Right. And that's why I think when you say 50.3, that is, I mean, it's sad that we have to be like, yay, more than half voted. But we need like 55. I mean, we need something that is so far, like what we've been seeing in Minneapolis. We need that kind of a turnout. And we need, as you're saying, I mean, I love, because between you and Miles together, I know you have to leave in a second, David, I'll let you jump in, but Miles was talking a lot about some of the security side of this, and also legal DAs, which I think he's exactly right. I think I really have been screaming for an attorney general or a DA to prosecute one of these ICE assholes under state law and set a precedent before our elections come, so that they know that they can be. But also now you're talking about the narrative, at which you're so good at, and that's why I wanted you on, because it is important. If they control it and then people think, oh, all the votes are stolen. No, we need to be out there recruiting people, talking to people, and letting them know the truth about all of this stuff ahead of time and constantly. And
Reed, you mentioned 50.3 turnout in 2018. That was the year that Democrats gained 41 seats in the U.S. House, which was the biggest since the 1974 Watergate midterm. So, if Democrats can give people a good reason not just to oppose Trump, but say, you're concerned about affordability, here's what we're going to do about it. You're concerned about the wealth gap, here's exactly what we're going to do about it. Here's how we're going to solve these problems that people are aware of, as opposed to, we're going to block Trump and we're going to do everything we can to hold him accountable. But to your point, I think giving people a reason not just to be against something, but to be for something, that generally gets more people out to the polls.
Well, contrast,
David, let me, because I want to say this, Dave, because I know he's got to go. So you also got to play a little bit of political jujitsu. So a couple of weeks ago, Donald Trump says he's going to cap credit card rates at 10%. Okay. Now look, I know that they're like 27, which seems usurious, if that's the word to me, right? But like, if you're a Democrat, right, and you go, you know what? I don't disagree. I don't agree on much with Donald Trump, but I agree with him on this. I'm going to bring a bill to the floor right now. Okay. Whether or not you agree that that is a good idea from a financial perspective or a credit perspective, you have now put every Republican in the House having to make a decision. Are they for banks or are they for Trump?
Right. Very smart.
Right?
Yep. No, that's exactly right.
Box Canyon. Guys, this is campaigning 101.
I know.
But the answer is always, no, we can't do anything. No, we have to do it. I mean, even you saw today, both Schumer and Jeffries are backing off masks, right? Like, they're backing off something that wasn't a thing to begin with.
And masks are the 80-20 issue. I mean,
that's what I mean.
Polling on this is out of control. I mean, it's 80-20. Literally, 79% of everybody believes that I should not have masks on.
Right.
I
mean,
so
it's something that's very
like,
they look like bad guys from a freaking Batman movie. This is something that's very easy to get people to agree on. And it is a thing that the cautiousness, the deference to donors, I mean, it drives me fucking nuts. Because again, when you're talking about the way I learned campaign politics, and I bet you did too, and David covered it, is the best message you can have. You have to say what you're for, but the best thing of all is if what you're for is exactly what they're against, so that you've got a terrific contrast, and what you're for is the popular thing, and what they're against, and what they're for is the negative thing. And it's like, we don't think there should be roaming goons with masks on their faces who don't tell you who they are, that they're members of law enforcement who kidnap you.
Right.
Your turn, guys. I mean, this is not hard, especially when you're under the rubric of billionaire predators and Jeffrey Epstein. I think an easy message can be put together about who the predators are, financial, sexual, predators in all sorts of ways in our country, frankly, predators on democracy versus the rest of us. And the economic numbers prove it. They're taking away rights from various groups, from everybody proves it. I mean, it's not difficult. Affordability is an issue. Like, why we don't do this, why we can't do this, I will never understand.
Look.
I got to run, but
Yeah.
Reed, I just want to say thanks for being on. You guys keep the conversation going.
We'll see
Cliff,
you.
great show. Reed, great to see you as always. Power to the people. We'll talk soon, you guys. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Take care, bud. Thanks for being here. Keep going, Reed.
Yeah. So, I mean, I want to think. So you brought up something. So I think you were referencing obliquely. You were talking about like the Jeffrey Epstein stuff, right?
Yes.
And Epstein is a little bit different from the other Trump scandals, because Trump in the other scandals, I think Cliff had what I call the discount rate, which he's been such a publicly bad guy for so long that no one expected any different from him.
Yeah.
Right. So
he lowered expectations, kind of like for a debate is what you're saying, but just his whole life.
Well, and then it quickly broke down 50-50 on strictly partisan lines, right? He's a bad guy, but he's my bad guy. He's a bad guy. He's your bad, whatever. But the Epstein piece of this, not only a major indictment of what I call the super elite, but also when you have Thomas Massie and Sean Ryan, right? And some of these major voices of, Massey's a MAGA true believer. Ryan's more of a populist, right? Podcaster, but he's got a top 20 podcast. When you've lost Sean Ryan, right? He is out there saying,
well, that's the manosphere where they won some of these guys from, right? I mean, that's important when they lose people like that. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so let me bring it back to a campaign context. What you're now seeing is that you can have turnout, let's say 50.3, 51%. But if all of those guys who work for Trump stay home, Cliff, because they're like, I don't want to be part of the party. Remember, these guys were probably never really Republicans anyway.
Yeah. Right. It was more the Trump sort of the fame of his stupid TV show and WWE stuff and all that crap.
Well, and the transgressive nature of who he is and all that. And I don't have to be politically correct anymore.
Right.
But if they start to peel off because they just, it turns out Trump was just like the rest of them all along, which he is. That also gives the perfect opportunity for Democrats to have a massive wave. And again, I saw some people like, oh, Democrats could pick up between 12 and 15 seats this year. Like, that's it?
Yeah, no,
it should be 60 seats. Shoot for 60.
I did the math on it, Reed. And then, I'm not going to claim to be a math expert here. But
no, there's no math here.
Right. We're using the old Dan Aykroyd line. Right. I wasn't aware there was going to be. Remember, that's when we had Gerald Ford.
I was led to believe there would be no math.
Right. Oh, no, it was Chevy Chase. Sorry. But yes, it was awesome. It was so awesome. But I looked at it and if I'm remembering my own numbers correctly, if there were a plus 14 swing, if every seat if every seat that's up to plus 14 Republican, and we're now competing in those seats, if we would take 71 seats. And so as far as I'm concerned, if the economy just keeps going in this direction, if the Epstein stuff just keeps coming out, and I don't see why those things won't keep happening, and everything else, this guy keeps having purple blotches in more places that people don't even have places. I really do think we could see an all-time low. I mean, he was at 34% in the poll that I saw. I mean, you're really getting towards bottom. And at that point, if we're winning in plus 14, 15, 16, we should be looking FDR. But what I keep saying, I mean, I think he won like 90 something seats. So, okay, not necessarily that, but like 75 seats. And as far as I'm concerned, to do that though, is, as you said, we'll win the House, just by winning the House because of how bad the Republicans are. We need our side with our message that contrasts with theirs about who they are. And again, it is why I've picked up on it. I don't care. People don't have to choose my formulation, choose whatever, but say something, come up with a narrative. It's the super predators against the rest of us. They used to love that term when they were trying to refer to people of color in crime. So why don't we use that one that they used against them, that we've got a bunch of billionaire super predators who were happy to hang out with Jeffrey Epstein, happy to take your home from you, happy in private equity to steal your business. They're happy to destroy our economy and get in bed with Putin and, start World War III with Greenland. I mean, again, the narrative part of this should be so easy to me. And if we do that right, we box them off where you're even talking to people, as I've said before, who are making a couple $100,000 a year or more than that, who can't afford childcare and can't afford college. And so you're no longer just talking to working Americans. You're talking to almost everybody because we're almost all being fucked by these billionaires, right? There's a reason that France just raided Elon Musk's office. He does bad things.
Well, I mean, so let me get a touch nerdy on you here, Cliff. So if you have Dario Amodei, who is the CEO of Anthropic, the AI company, right? Yes. And he's out there saying in the next 1 to 5 years, 25 to 50% of white collar jobs could go poof. Okay. Now, I don't know whether or not he believes that, but
why aren't we messaging that?
Right. But he's decided he wants to say that out loud. Okay. So now what you're telling, I don't know what the percentage of the population that's white collar workers, but let's just make it easy. Let's say it's 50-50. So if you're now telling 25% of the population that they're going to be out of work, right? Or at least what they've done, what they went to college for, what they spent money on college for, maybe what they have college debt for, right? In a time, as you noted, when people can't afford housing, electricity, food, right? Their kids are not getting the education they need. I mean, when a third of the country can't read above a 6th grade level, I think we've had a total collapse.
I put headlines into YouTube where it said, sorry, that's a 9th grade level. You need their little AI thing. You need to lower the level because people won't understand it. I mean, and I'm already sitting there trying to dumb it down and they're telling me I'm not doing a good enough job.
And look, I'll tell you, I mean, I have become a real populist at this, which is, I don't blame the person who didn't get the good education. I blame the education.
Oh,
right.
Like, I'm with you.
It's not the student's job is to be there to learn. And if they show up every day, even by osmosis, Cliff, they should be able to read at a 9th grade level.
Yes.
But so now you have these wealthy, and here's another part: AI, crypto, Trump, Meta already put $65 million. Zucker put $65 million in a super PAC for pro-tech, pro-AI candidates, right? And remember, he basically has unlimited money,
of course.
Right? The only thing that we're going to have, like Democratic candidates will have money, yes. But we'll have
unlimited anger, and Zuckerberg is one of the easiest people to run against, just as is Jeff Bezos, just as is Elon Musk, just as is Peter Thiel. Like, again, these are the super predators that are destroying us. And as you're saying with AI, I don't know, maybe go and look at how the doomsday clock, they adjusted it closer because apparently the Terminator could actually happen, according to scientists, because one of the few of these AI things have refused to shut off and told people to basically fuck off. So that's
look, I mean, I don't know that it's going to become the HAL 9000 or Skynet or the Matrix, but dude, do we want it to be?
You're reeling them off like the movies, man.
I know my movies. I know my out of control computers, and so. But I mean, the point is, Cliff, it's like, do you want that technology? Right? Like,
do you even want a chance that that's out there? That technology, I agree with you. I think in terms of both, like people's personal security and fears, and jobs. Like, I think when you look at both of those you're talking about, absolutely. When I listed some of those super predator issues as I see them before, this should be one of them. This is how you're exactly right. This is why I wanted you on here, Reed, because you're too damn smart. No, I mean, seriously, like Can
you tell my family that? Because they don't believe it.
Who do you want me to tell? Your
My
clients?
family.
Your family, anyone you want, your kids. In terms of messaging and understanding political tactics and strategy and all of that, you're one of the smartest people I've ever met, and you're nailing that because that's exactly right. These are the populist issues if you combine them. And again, people here can have their differences in the chat and say, who makes what money and who does what. But I'm just trying to tell people that there are people right now who make what we consider a lot of money, and they cannot afford childcare. They can't afford to send their kids to college. They can't afford health care. They can't afford, and so we should be reaching out to them and inviting them in by boxing off these super predator billionaires who are also leeching off of them the same way they're leeching off the rest of us.
Well, and I'm just, if I might just, I'm looking at one of the comments in your chat here, Cliff, and somebody said that CEO, I assume Bonnie's talking about Dario Amodei, is making a case for universal basic income. Well, of course he is. You know why? Because he's not going to pay for it. The government is.
Yeah.
Right. Of course he's all for UBI. Right. Like, I'm not necessarily opposed to it, but like,
He
if we're
also
going to
doesn't
have
have to
universal
vote
basic
for it and run
income,
for office. So it's a very easy. I'd like to see him advocate for a wealth tax and for the capital gains rate to go back up to being equal to the marginal rate. And I'd like to see, and all the other things that have turned our society upside down the last 40 or 50 years and rewarded being born into wealth and investing large amounts of money, and frankly, being a predator of the sorts of private equity companies that swoop in and are vulture capitalists and steal your pension and whatever. Maybe if I could see him advocating for rolling back some of that crap, maybe we should split up. I was talking the other day, I was on our show yesterday, the 164, I believe it was, bank accounts that Jeffrey Epstein had through JP Morgan. Well, maybe, and I'm sorry, I know it. Bill Clinton signed this, and that was the first one I worked for. And I think Bill Clinton did a lot of good, but also made mistakes. And on this one, allowing ending Glass-Steagall was stupid. All right. It was incredibly stupid. It was injecting regular banks with the kind of risk that investment banks get involved in. And
well, and here's the other part. We'd already seen it, not to give too much of an economic history lesson here, Cliff, but they'd already seen 4 or 5 or 6 years previous to Glass-Steagall being repealed, that when they deregulated savings and loans, they took on incredible risk. They all made incredible money, and the whole thing blew up. And guess who had to pay for it?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, right. There's a cycle here, guys.
Right? No, I know it
Every
happens.
Every time something blows up, it's the people with the least who have to take care of the people with the most, who keep the most. And it's like, sorry, Cliff, your house on the market.
Yep. We have this really nice swimming auditorium here in Cincinnati named the Keating Swimming Auditorium because a certain family, some of them ended up out in Phoenix, but they were from Cincinnati, the Wealth and Keating, and some of them are still your Keating family. And that's who, of course, was involved in that savings and loan scandal back when you're talking about. So that should be a reminder to everybody around here when they see that. Again, you're right. We go through these cycles and it's like, oh, the market can't crash again, or the housing market can't crash, or people can't come up with these ridiculous derivatives or whatever it is. We could deregulate again. And then we just go through the same shit again. And as you pointed out, the businesses always get bailed out and regular people just get screwed.
Right. And it's we're now in a society and frankly an economy, Cliff, where the number must always go up. And if the number doesn't go up, and choose AI valuation, the stock market, housing prices, whatever it is, as soon as those plateau or sink even a little bit, right, you start to see everything else that was held up by them start to collapse. And so you're seeing crypto's taking a dive. Other things are taking a dive. The economy, the GDP is being propped up by wealthy people spending money and injection into AI. Like, none of those things are economically stable.
They're not tied to the rest of our economy at all. And you're right, they're not stable. It also reminds me of another thing. Again, I would like to hear, and I don't know what's his name again. I don't remember the dude's name at the AI company, but
Dario Amodei. Yeah,
Dario Amodei. What I'd like to hear is, one of the I'd say economically worst laws. It's hard to say which are the worst, but definitely a bad one under Ronald Reagan in it was 82, 83, when we decided that what we'd called stock manipulation was now allowed. You could buy back your own stock. And oh, wow, I just happen to have all of these options in my own company. So I'm literally choosing to make myself wealthier. It is the biggest conflict of interest, the biggest scam, and a way to make sure the markets are always going up and a certain class of people are always happy. And in the end, it's no different than insider trading. It is stock manipulation.
It's
And
look, it's and it really is, it really is, to your point, financial engineering, which is I have some money, I buy back my stock, the stock goes up, I get a bigger bonus because I'm the CEO. I juice the price for my dividend holder, for my shareholders, the dividend goes up, but I didn't make an extra widget, right?
right.
I didn't
Right.
build a better mousetrap.
Didn't invest in
right?
new factories, didn't hire new workers, didn't
Well,
right?
think about all of the money that corporations were given during COVID, right? I think Delta Airlines was one of them, right? Which was supposed to be utilized to pay employees. And what did they do? They bought back stock, right? Like, so
Yep.
the reason why
And that should be
regulation
criminal,
exists,
honestly.
right? The reason why regulations exist is not to harm innovation, right? The reason regulation exists is because we know, back to the founders or FDR or whoever you want to call it, that humans are fallible, incredibly fallible. And when money and power beget power and money, right? Common sense goes out the frickin' window, right?
Yep.
That's why these things exist, to protect us, A, from ourselves, most generally and universally, Cliff, but also to protect us from other people's worst instincts.
No, right. I mean, they're whatever couple percent of us who are always going to be sociopaths, and we need the laws to apply to everyone, so that those couple percent of people don't destroy the rest of us. But also, you're right. Even in smaller cases, people will take advantage of things you allow them to take advantage of. It's human nature. I'm not saying everybody. There are some very good people out there, and there are also some people that will do this. And again, I mean, these deregulation phases are insane. So before we go, why don't you, well, I'm going to do one thing, and I want you to, for a second, say what your organization is doing, not for a second, but maybe a minute.
Sure.
But I have
Sure.
to, hold on.
I'm just going to start talking because Cliff has left us with, first of all, Cliff needs a new chair. Jesus Christ.
Isn't that cool?
It's
That's part of my brand now, I think. Or no, I
Is
don't
it?
know. No,
That's not
really.
a brand you want.
But I was going to show this. This is a brand, and this is Casamigos, and
I'm sure
I'm
George
showing that.
Clooney's tequila.
Yeah, I really like it. It's good stuff. George Clooney, by the way, from Northern Kentucky, near Cincinnati. Bring it up because tonight we kick off Tequila Talk, where I will be joined by Joe Walsh, and it'll help because the conversation I've had today with both with Reed and our earlier conversation, this stuff is with Miles is a little bit frightening, and what our plan is, Joe and I, is to have fun and try to tell stories and make jokes about the times that we used to rip each other apart. We found old tweets, but to end a week with a little bit of tequila and a little bit of appreciating life and hoping that we can take people into the weekends a little happier. So yes, we'll talk about politics, but it'll be a little bit of a happier way. So that's at 6 p.m. Eastern tonight. It'll be me and Joe Walsh again. Please come on by. But otherwise, before you go, I want you to tell people about your organization, because it sounds like a pretty awesome set of plans you have. And I'm hoping that we are going to do some work with you in some ways. There are ways that we can live stream stuff you're doing and other things.
Sure.
That would be awesome.
So a couple of things. One, I was on the phone with Joe earlier in the week, and he's a guy who, we were both Republicans, but certainly I was never a MAGA Republican, and right. Joe was. But there are few better guys on earth than Joe. I mean,
I agree with that.
Aside from being salt of the earth, he is freaking hilarious.
And that's why I had to do this with him, because I was just like, we both enjoy laughing a lot and are silly and ridiculous. And I always say that humans are predictable, which is why algorithms work and all of that. Joe is one of those exceptions where he legitimately, I almost feel like I don't know what was going on in his brain when I look back at those old tweets, but he's just the nicest, funniest, greatest guy. And so who knows?
Right. So anyway, so thank you for the opportunity to talk about the union. So I'm president of the union, jointheunion.us, Cliff, and we've got about 175,000 volunteers across the country. We have about 100 partner organizations, and for a long time, we've served as sort of the hub of many of these organizations, providing, assistance, awareness, manpower, whatever it is they need to do this, because a lot of these organizations are understaffed and underfunded, as you know. They do incredible work. Let's be clear. Most of them would not exist, Cliff, if like the Democratic Party did what it was supposed to do over the last 15 or 20 years. No, you know, and so
I think there's a lot of our society right now that wouldn't exist the way it did if we did what we were supposed to do. Sadly, I'm not going to say that I will blame Republicans. I will blame, you know, McConnell and Newt Gingrich and people for paving the path for Donald Trump. But there are plenty of choke points for Democrats, if they'd stood up, could have stopped this along the way. And we just sort of played nice and said, let's just go along and it'll be okay. And it's not okay.
So this year we're rolling out something. We'll be rolling out the districts that we're going to work in here in just a few days, actually. So we are creating what's called the Hub Project in some key districts. Now, it's not going to be, you know, the typical, you know, swing district. These are going to be districts that are probably just a little bit outside those frontline districts, because as we talked about when David was still on the phone, on the call, excuse me, like we want to be able to make sure that this is as big a win as we can get it. And so we're going to go into those districts.
Great.
And we'll basically create parallel campaign structures. But the difference, instead of having to spend millions of dollars on television ads, right, we will be able to partner with our partner organizations, people like Field Team 6 or Run for Something or Souls to the Polls or any of those people, to start getting people out into neighborhoods talking to voters now. Because if there's one thing I can tell you in the last 3 election cycles I've seen, is when you get out in October and talk to somebody who's at best a mid-propensity voter, right? There's a 50-50 chance they're going to, you're like, hi, I'm from so-and-so, and you have to do this. They're like, why are you here? Why are you here now?
Right.
Who are you? What are you talking about? And then
maybe you should bring some tequila. I don't know. Just a thought.
Well, tequila. Listen, you know, as I understand from Kentucky in the old days, they used to give everybody a pint of whiskey, right? Like,
come on out here, and we'll go to some of the old bourbon haunts and have some fun. But go ahead.
And so we're going to do those things. In addition to getting out and talking to people, part of that process will also be delivering messages to those voters who should vote for the Democrat, speaking to independent voters about why they should not vote for the Republican. Let's be very clear. Like, this is voter contact, but also going out of our way to do what I said earlier, recruit poll watchers, recruit poll workers, getting all of those pieces of civic society back, also while helping a lot of our local community organizations and nonprofits. Because, you know, what I see here, Cliff, is that things are going to get much tougher before they get better. And we need as many mutual aid societies as we can. And so what I would ask people here to do is go to jointheunion.us, sign up. We're trying to raise $2 million this year. If you want to throw a few shekels at us, we would certainly love that. I'm not going to deny that we need some money to hire up and hire our people. But
support them. Honestly, what they're doing here. I mean, again, the messaging, getting out there early and setting a narrative and making sure people know the stakes and all of that is hugely important. So definitely support Reed. Let me ask you this, Reed. I mean, you said you brought the Hub Project. Is it the same as the one that was in DC before, or is this there used to be another something called the Hub Project in DC that did campaigns like this? But
I have no idea.
All right, fair enough.
If I stole the idea, thank you for whoever came up with it.
I don't think, I just didn't know if you joined with somebody else. There's no
but I mean, we are blessed to have, like I said, 100 partner organizations. Also, starting in the next couple of weeks, I believe every Wednesday evening, we will be doing a live Zoom with one of the leaders of one of our partners about what they're doing, how you can get involved as well. So I hope that folks will tune into that. Our Mobilize page, guys, we have 2 people who do nothing but take incoming Mobilize requests from our partners and post them. I promise you, no matter where you live, from Alaska to Florida and Maine to Hawaii, there is something you can do and some help that, you know, someone needs. So thank you all so much.
Wow. I mean, this feels good today. You know, I mean, it'll still be nice to talk happy with tequila tonight and Joe, but I thought this would be the perfect time that doing that show, because I'd be depressed enough after this conversation. And actually, you are doing a lot of great work. Miles is doing a lot of great work. You guys are talking to DAs. You're talking to local officials who need to be out there. You're mobilizing people. You're talking about getting a message out there. I mean, this again,
it's almost like a campaign, Cliff.
I know it's almost like you guys are like another party. Okay, I'll stop before I get thrown out. Well, Reed, thank you for joining me.
Thanks,
Thank you. We adjusted the time a little bit at the last minute, and things happen and whatever. But you're awesome as always, and great of you to be here. And let's do this again soon, I hope.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, take care, buddy. And folks, I think that will be all she wrote for this one. The other three have left me. I'm all alone. So 6 p.m. Me and Joe Walsh drinking some tequila and talking some fun stories and politics and laughing about how we used to hate each other, and also just trying to make you feel better about the general state of things and going into the weekend that yes, we can win this. Yes, we can take back our country, and we will, because there's no other option. Honestly, there isn't. We can't live under people like this. We need to get our republic back and frankly make it even much better than before. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you for being here. And my friends, as I try to find the same thing and go through this every time, as the sun sets slowly in the west, I bid you a fond farewell.